If you are learning English, should you try to sound like a native? Should you try to have a native accent? Well, there is this idea that teachers say, don't try to sound like a native speaker. This is not the goal. English is for communication. Language is for communication. Don't worry about sounding like a native. English is the global language. Okay, we all have different accents, so we don't need to sound like an Australian speaker, a British speaker, or an American speaker. Your accent is who you are, right? Your accent is your identity. It defines you. It's what tells the world where you're from, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. But other teachers, there's this idea that, they correct pronunciation mistakes, and they kind of force this native English pronunciation. So they say, this is not how we pronounce things. This is the correct pronunciation of this word. Okay? And they say, you should try to sound like a native. I've seen teachers, I've had colleagues, maybe they didn't admit this, but actually in class, then if someone said something like thank you with the t sound instead of th, thank you, they would correct. We don't say thank you because thank is that big thing that they use in a war, a tank. So what's the answer here? Should you try to have a native accent or not? Well, it depends on what you want, and it also depends on why. I mean, your decision should be based on a valid reason, I think, to have a native accent. And a few months ago, I wrote this blog post, which is actually one of the most read blog posts that I've written, where I tell about 5 reasons why you should try to have a native English accent. And these were my 5 reasons when I was learning English. So I had 5 reasons why I wanted to have a native English accent. I wanted to sound like a native. But then I discovered that 3 of these reasons were stupid reasons for wanting to have a native English accent, and 2 of these reasons were actually valid ones. Maybe you've already read my blog post, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this. So my first reason is, I've got them here. So fear of being judged. And so I wanted to have a native accent because I was afraid of being judged or made fun of because of my Italian accent. So in Italy, for example, and I think in other parts of the world, Spain, I think also in Spain, something happened, I remember. People normally, we tend to make fun of people who have a strong Italian accent when they speak English. Politicians, some of them have a terrible accent, but they can still communicate. And friends, some of my friends, when I heard them speak English with a strong Italian accent, we used to make fun of each other. We have even a term to express this. We call it Italian, macaronic Italian. So it's macaronic English, inglese maccheronico, we say. because it's like broken English with a strong Italian accent. That is what Italian English Maccheronico is. So I was afraid of being judged, so I wanted to sound like a native. Then I wanted to become a teacher, so I thought, well, a teacher of English must have a native English accent. I need to try to sound like a native. That was reason number 2. Reason number 3 was, I can't remember, let me see, I've got it here. All right, okay, identity. So I wanted to sound like a native when I was in London. When I was in London, I wanted to sound like a native. I wanted to sound British, because that helped me connect with British people. To me, it was weird if I didn't sound like them when I spoke to them. For some reason, this was kind of weird, and sounding like them was a way for me to connect, to say, look, I am like you. I come from another country, but I try to sound like you, and I want to sound like you because this will help me connect better with you. The same happened to me in Australia. The same happened to me in New Zealand, in these English-speaking countries. So, to me, this was another reason for wanting to sound like a native. Then the other reason was job aspirations, okay, and personal taste. I wanted to sound like a native in London, when I was in London, because I loved the way British people sounded. You know, when they said, they didn't pronounce the R at the end of, for example, car. They said, my car. In other examples. Anyway, maybe you know what they sound like, but I really loved the accent, so I wanted to imitate the accent. the accent. Same thing happened in Australia. When I was in Australia, I thought, forget about the British accent. Now I want an Australian accent. Look, they sound amazing. Like, no worries. When they said no worries, g'day, mate. They said all these things, and I loved imitating these sounds. The same then happened in New Zealand. When I was in New Zealand, I thought, wow, they don't say 10 when they say the number 10. They say tin, win instead of when. And I spent 2 years in New Zealand, and I love that. I love the accent. I wanted to have a New Zealand accent. That was another reason. And then another reason was correctedness. How do we say this word? You see, I don't even know. Correctness. I think I'm mispronouncing this. I'll double check. Correctness. All right. So being correct, to me, wanting to sound like a native, wanting to learn English, to me, meant mastering the pronunciation, not only the vocabulary and the grammar, but also the pronunciation. If I'm studying a language, I want to master its pronunciation, its grammar, its rules, and its pronunciation too. You know, why should I leave pronunciation out of this? I want to sound like a native. But now, now I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for, since 2015. I've had a lot of students. I've had students from all over the world, and I've changed my mind about many things. So what do you think are my 3 stupid reasons? I can tell you that fear of being judged is a stupid reason for wanting to sound like a native. Because, I mean, why should you feel inferior? Why would you ever want to, please others with your accent? This is a stupid reason. you should be proud of the fact that you're learning another language already, which is something that most people, don't do. So be proud of your accent. There's nothing wrong with having a native accent, especially if you want to have a native accent because you feel, that person will make fun of me because I sound Italian, French, Japanese. Well, who cares? Fuck them. Seriously. Like, what's the problem? If at the job interview they say, well, but you have, your accent is not, doesn't sound British or doesn't sound American, well, bye-bye. I don't want this job. Why are you discriminating people who have another accent, a non-native accent? That's discrimination. So I don't think you should work for this company. I don't think you should have a partner who makes fun of you because of your accent. Don't worry about what other people think of you. That's standard advice. So this is a stupid reason. Job aspirations. Well, this is a stupid reason because I've just said it. Because non-native English teachers might have their own accent, and I've had many colleagues with an accent, with an Italian accent, with in New Zealand I had a Russian colleague who had a little bit of a Russian accent. What's the problem? They are teachers. We are teachers. Our job is to teach, is to inspire, is to motivate, is not to sound perfectly British. Why are you expecting this from a teacher? It's a stupid reason, right? You don't have to have a native English accent, even if you are an English teacher. So, stupid reason number 2. Stupid reason number 3, being correct. But what does it mean to have correct pronunciation? What's the definition of correct pronunciation? In Ireland, for example, they pronounce certain words in a certain way. Even native speakers have their own accent. And so what's the correct pronunciation? I thought that correct pronunciation meant native English pronunciation. But actually now I've changed my mind. Native pronunciation doesn't mean that it's correct pronunciation. Correct pronunciation is understandable pronunciation. If I can understand what you're saying, if I'm not going, what? No, sorry, I can't understand. Like, if I'm not doing this, then your pronunciation is fine. Your accent is totally fine. The problem starts when people can't understand you because of your accent. In that case, you should do something about it, right? So English is the global language, and you don't need to have native pronunciation, because English is the language that people from all over the world use to communicate with other people who speak a different language. So we use English to communicate. Personal taste. This is a good reason. If you like it, if you want to sound like a native because you like it, well, then do it. Who cares what your teacher says? If your teacher says, no, you shouldn't, well, teacher, look, I like how they sound. I like what they say, the ways they pronounce things. Perfect reason. Personal taste. And the other one is, I keep forgetting, identity. Well, what's the problem if I want to be more connected to another culture by sounding like them? I don't see any problems in this. This is another good reason. You will find more in my blog post. I've written about my story there. So remember, decide why you want to sound like a native. If you want to, you don't have to. And make sure that you have good reasons for it. These are my 5. I hope this helps. Bye-bye.